Final Fantasy is back. Okay, it was never really gone. But over the past 2 decades, the legendary series has struggled to meet the extremely high bar that it used to hit so reliably. FF12 has never been one of my favorites, but I like 13 more than most. I love 14, even if I think it's a tad overrated, and I really like 15 in spite of its glaring flaws. But FF16 is the best mainline Final Fantasy since 10, and that's due to its excellence in 2 key areas: character and spectacle. And while it didn't give me everything I hoped for from a Final Fantasy experience, 16's characters moved me to tears, and its epic encounters blew my mind again and again with some of the wildest battles I've ever seen. This video contains spoilers for the entirety of Final Fantasy XVI, so if you've not yet finished the game, this is your chance to duck out. Okay? Let's go. Clive Rosfield is an excellent lead, worthy of rubbing elbows with Terra, Cloud, and Squall. Yes, Squall, at the top of the list of best Final Fantasy protagonists. Although he's without a doubt the most brutal hero the series has ever seen, he never feels like a rabid beast. He's a driven, often desperate man, fighting with fang and claw to survive, protect those he loves, and build a better world. 16's voice acting is strong across the board, but Ben Starr's performance is particularly outstanding. He imbues Clive with both blazing ferocity and delicate compassion. Even when waylaid by his own inner demons, Clive is a kind, protective soul with a lot of love to give. He quickly becomes an ardent believer in Cid's cause, and his serendipitous reunion with Jill helps him learn to live not for revenge, but to work for the greater good. But nobody means more to Clive than his brother Joshua. From a young age, Clive is a brave, talented fighter who earns the respect of his fellow soldiers. However, he failed to inherit the power of the Phoenix, and his mother despises him for it. That gift, or is it a curse, instead went to the meek Joshua, who feels unworthy of it, and rues that the Phoenix did not end up in the hands of his more capable older brother. The two have every reason to resent each other, but instead their mutual support is unconditional. The sincerity of their love blasts the stakes and dramatic tension into the stratosphere. From Joshua's violent death at the claws of Ifrit, to Clive's frenzied hunger for vengeance, and finally their desperately desired reunion, their brotherhood is the heart of 16's story. Jill, on the other hand, is a character I struggle with. This is Clive's story, and her primary role is to support him. As Clive wrestles with the truth of who he is and what he did, he questions what reason he has to go on living. Jill craved death too during her 13 years as a slave, but that changed when her childhood prayer suddenly came true. Miraculously, Clive came back to her. She believes there must be a reason for this, and her encouragement helps him press on. Their bond culminates in a tender, intimate moment on the beaches of Ash. As vulnerable as can be, they share their burdens and pledge undying devotion to each other. Throughout the game, Clive seizes iconic powers from his foes, but this time, Jill lovingly entrusts hers to him. There's no doubt that she's important to the story, yet sometimes it feels like she isn't. She's oddly quiet at times. When Cid convinces Clive to destroy the Mother Crystals, for example, Jill goes along with their world-shattering plan without voicing her thoughts on the matter. The return to the Iron Kingdom should be her time to shine, but it's a disappointingly shallow chapter. Jill succeeds in exacting revenge against her former captors, but the story moves on right away, and there's no time to focus on what this means for her. Furthermore, she's frequently relegated to the sidelines. There's no role for her in the revenge mission against Hugo Kupka. She stays behind for the expedition to Ash, and most egregiously, she's left out of the final battle. What other Final Fantasy game intentionally excludes a main party member from the final battle? It's just kind of weird. There's complexity to Jill, and she definitely does some cool things, but she lacks the protagonism to stand out. The otherwise outstanding cast is headlined by Sidolphus Telamon. 16's Cid is the best in the series, and I don't think it's particularly close. Between his endless supply of sassy one-liners that bring some much-needed levity to a grim world, to Ralph Ineson's instantly iconic voice performance, and the significance of a legacy that lives on long after he's gone, I have no doubt that Cidolfus will remain a fan favorite for many years to come. Dion, Prince of Dragoons, is another shining star. It takes a while for him to become active in the story, but he's worth waiting for. His admirable love and devotion to his family and his country make the way it falls apart all the more tragic. And beyond that, he's just really cool. The roguish Gav and the exuberant Mid are delightful. Torgal's the bestest boy around. And shout out to Nectar the Moogle, who only has a tiny role but nevertheless brings me a lot of joy. I was sorely disappointed by Benedicta's early death. There was so much more I wanted to know about her, but she lights up the screen every time she swaggers onto it. Something almost every character has in droves is a powerful presence. They enter the scene and I find myself leaning forward, hanging on every word, greedily lapping up every detail the game deigns to offer me. The fact that I'm always so desperate for more, even from the sometimes lackluster Jill, is indicative of superb character work. 16 supplements its fine characterization with unrelenting spectacle. Everywhere you look, you're greeted with eye-catching sights. Environments are dotted with the vaguely angelic ruins of a fallen civilization that both look sick and create an air of mystery. Looming in the distance are mother crystals, towering glassy mountains that will forever endure amongst 16's most iconic imagery. The cities built around them are equally stunning, though it sucks we don't get to properly explore any of Valisthea's capitals. Combat is even flashier, though 16 is not a challenging game. Even S-rank Notorious Marks, ostensibly the most difficult enemies Valisthea has to offer, fail to put up much of a fight. Despite this, battles remain fun and engaging because they feel great and look amazing. Mixing together basic sword strikes with charged attacks and magic bursts is consistently satisfying, while the slow motion effects that accompany precision dodges and parries let you admire how cool Clive looks at all times. The iconic abilities are, of course, the star of the show. Phoenix shifting across the battlefield to punish a downed enemy is awesome. Bahamut's flare moves are absolute nukes, and there's simply no better feeling than blocking an attack with Titan's giant fists, then immediately countering with 3 huge punches. It's a shame that you can only access 3 icons at a time, because they're all so much fun to use. By the end of the game, I settled on Shiva, Garuda, and Odin as my preferred setup. Shiva's Cold Snap is an improved dodge that freezes enemies in place. Garuda's Deadly Embrace is a must for grappling in enemies and toppling half-staggered ones. While Odin's Zentetsken is the ultimate cheat code, as it slices anything on the battlefield in half. 16's dazzling implementation of summons is one of my favorites in the series. Boss fights are cinematic multi-phase affairs that never fail to reach epic climaxes. The clash with Benedicta atop Caer Norvent is among my favorites because it represents what makes these encounters so consistently strong. Escalation. The longer the fight rages on, the more intense it becomes. First, Benedicta semi-primes, sprouting wings and taking to the sky. The battle tests your timing and evasion skills as she rains debris upon you from above. When it looks like she's gotten the better of Clive, Torgal intervenes. As Benedicta becomes increasingly infuriated that a lowly branded like Clive is able to hang with her, she rips apart the castle ramparts and launches them at him. All of this plays out against an amazing backdrop, with Drake's head illuminating the night sky. It's awesome. When these unbelievable battles intersect with emotionally resonant character moments, 16 is at its glorious best. Whether it's Masayoshi Soken's pulse-pounding soundtrack blaring in your ears as Clive finally accepts the truth, or our hero literally shouting out Final Fantasy as he applies the finishing blow to his enemy, 16's set pieces are unrivaled by anything I've ever played. The highlight of the game is the battle with Bahamut, from Clive seeing Phoenix swoop across the sky and his resulting desperation to get to his brother at any cost, to the two of them literally joining forces and ascending into outer space to engage the King of Dragons. Everything about this sequence is magic. It sounds ridiculous to say, But knowing everything Clive and Joshua went through to arrive at this point, I bawled my eyes out as these giant monsters waged war against each other. And that's before witnessing Dion's heartbreaking descent into madness and the end of Annabella. 16 tends to rely on cutscenes rather than telling its story through gameplay, but these icon battles are an exception. The Bahamut sequence is so impactful because you can feel the brotherly love Clive and Joshua share for each other. You can hear it in their voices as they call out to each other, and see it through their repeated acts of sacrifice for one another. There is so much emotion and over-the-top action packed into such a short space. It's breathless, it's riveting, it's peak video games. Final Fantasy XVI does not excel in every aspect. The gameplay lacks variety, the open zones are empty and do little to encourage or reward exploration. And the side quests are tedious, far too numerous, and disruptive to the otherwise breakneck pacing, even if they do eventually lead to crucial character payoffs. Even so, it's an exceptional game. Sometimes all it takes are a couple of elements executed to near perfection. 16's wonderful cast and opulent battles will go down as some of the best the series has to offer. As for where Final Fantasy goes from here, it's anybody's guess. From my perspective, Creative Business Unit 3 has proven that they are able stewards of the mainline series. We haven't seen the same team make back-to-back titles in a long time, and there's been a lack of creative continuity as a result. I'd be happy to see CBU3 given the opportunity to learn from this experience, and hopefully come back with something even stronger for Final Fantasy XVII.
Good luck.